Perfect. So Doug and Nathan, thank you very much for joining today. What we're going to do is we're going to go through this slide deck, which we will have saved to our team site. But for the purposes of today, I want to go through what I consider the highlights. Partially because I think some of this may be, preaching to the choir in terms of the folks who show up are also the ones who are already involved in using the program. But these are some of the questions I feel like these answer some of the questions that we have routinely gotten, and we want to make sure that we answer for everyone. All right, so in the spirit of moving through this slide deck, I'm going to go to slide 4 to start. As soon as I can advance there. All right. So this, a lot of people talk about the different ways of engaging and different ways to sell licensing and software throughout, to their customer base and why they do one versus the other. And that's one of the questions and follow-ups that we've had with a lot of the partners to see, why are you transacting outside of CSP? So one thing we're going to talk about today, and I'm going to show a little bit about, is, the comparison between CSP, Open, Advisor, SPLA, and the various ways you can sell and transact. So today there's a number of options, right? So license, software assurance, and tomorrow it's more going to be cloud services and subscription based. I will not go through all the slides. If anybody has specific questions as we get to a slide, don't hesitate to ask. But in the effort of staying high level and also respecting that everybody's super busy trying to get to the holidays, I will move fairly quickly. Some of these stats and things, though I think they're important, I think they seem sort of sales and marketing related, and I think you guys already know, so you're welcome to use them. But, I just want to get to the meat of it. So on this slide, what I like about this is it shows and really highlights where we can transact in CSP, right? So obviously the Azure subscriptions, O365, EMS, and Dynamics 365. In our partner community base, most of it, like 80-90% of it, is O365. There are a good group of people transacting Azure subscriptions. There is a small group of people with Dynamics 365 and an even smaller group with EMS. But I just want to highlight these are some of the areas where you can sell within CSP. I'm going to go through the animation. So this I just wanted to show in terms of really putting it together where the offers are and where the market scenarios are. One of the things that Thomas and I really want to work with the partner community about is in the simplification and optimization, right? So it's all about the problems you're solving and not necessarily the Microsoft tools. If I were to look at a hierarchy of how I would package a solution, it would be problem first, proposed solution second, and technology stack either third or fourth, depending on if there's other areas or elements you have in there. So I really think it's important to understand, when you're going to market to solve a problem, that you know who you're solving it for, and you really have a good idea of what the total addressable problem is, which could be bigger than something that Microsoft alone can sell or solve. So, sweet spots for CSP. So I just wanted to highlight this as well because I think, really where we stand in our partner community, the value add, everybody wants sticky relationships and provide that extra value to their partners so they can differentiate themselves against the competition. Big thing is don't waste, a customer transition point. Somebody brings in new leadership, they're looking at mergers and acquisitions, they're seeing a big shift in their market. Those are the times where when there's big change, there's also big opportunity. And then the fully managed customers, right? So a lot of our managed service provider partners aren't everything other than maybe one person from an IT perspective at their customers. So really having that sticky, strong, responsive relationship is critical. All right. Some of these slides are really good in terms of the path, and you'll see with the animation and everything. I would highly recommend going back to them if you find that they're helpful, but I just, I think for a lot of folks, they're sort of past it. You have seen some version of this slide before if we've had any discussions with you about CSP, but it really highlights the additional incentives that you can get even as a direct CSP provider, and the reasons for it. So it's just another sort of marker to say that this is your guide in terms of how you can make your additional incentives. And this is also the reason that Thomas and I have been harping on the PIX completion piece, is because if you've been selling in CSP and you didn't have everything finalized by December 31st, then these incentives were not going to come to you, and you just have to wait for the incentives that would happen at the end of the fiscal year. So, but this is really critical. It helps you understand what your layering of incentives can be, your local accelerators, and how we can help and package things. And this is also a benefit to the package solution. As you're able to package more into the solution, you're also able to package more margin, and more margin is always better, especially given in this competitive market where some things have to be, to be competitive, you have to be very price conscious for your customers. Having those extra incentives can help build in some back-end margin as you're trying to competitively win deals. All right. So this slide, one of the things we talk about to receive incentives is you have to have a competency. Now, I think most of, if not all of our partners have some sort of competency, but one of the things that we'll be following up on in the new year is where we can develop new competencies based on what you guys want to do from a practice standpoint, and also where you might have competencies at risk. That is an area that Thomas focuses on specifically. And so, this is something just to highlight what the potential competencies are in this area and that are valuable and important as it pertains to CSP. And all of these links, once you get the presentation, will be live. And I would highly encourage you to go to these other links because there's valuable information there, but far more information than any of us would want me to cover today. All right. All right, so looking at this is just giving sort of a breakdown. It's not like it's new information, but potentially information that you could use or repurpose for your needs and customer discussions that helps, guide people in terms of one path or another. A lot of partners are saying, CSP is our go-forward motion because of all the incentives, but there are times when that's just not possible based on the customer you have or, their previous buying history and how they choose to buy. But we will talk a little bit about the licensing guidance that is contained in here. So this actually gives you a little bit of more detail. So again, I won't go through all of this, but looking at your positioning, the channel, the software types, software assurance, those sorts of things, I think it's important to just have some of this information at hand. It may not answer all the questions, but I would say that a lot of questions that come up to Thomas and I individually from partners could be answered within this deck or within the links that are contained in this deck. All right. Okay, perfect. So looking at sort of new and existing customers, what I like about this is it breaks things down into quadrants. So as you're looking at whatever customer you're calling on and sort of what the customer type is, you can start to narrow in on how you might want to either consider a hybrid licensing scenario or, how you might just say, okay, here's how we're going with all new customers, but, things get a little bit trickier with our existing customer base and how we, sell new licensing or try to blend with the licensing they already have. So just putting this in here for your reference. This is, I think, a valuable question chart. I will not go through today, but as you're going through and looking at are they EA or are they CSP, I think this is something that is a good reference point for partners as they're preparing what they're going to sell. And here's your Azure subscription guidance. Click through the animation real quick. No, went back too far. So looking at this and comparing, where your client falls into this stack and how they might be consuming Azure today. With a lot of our small to medium-sized business clients, they aren't consuming Azure. They don't know why they should be consuming Azure. They think they might need to consume, be in the cloud, but they're not sure why. So some of this is going to be very much a new Azure customer motion, and one of the things we'll be working on and really focusing on in the new year is what are those sort of starter solutions that get customers excited and on board, because nobody is excited about having another bill or a bill that could potentially grow, but they are interested in solving problems and staying ahead of the market, and speed to market is critical. And the market and the pace of speed is getting faster and faster. So understanding where your customer stands in that stack, how you want to present to them, these are all conversations that, from a practice perspective, we have folks who can help us. If you're building out a practice or enhancing a solution, we can provide support to that. But these are the types of questions and discussions we want to be going through in this next 6 months. Again, another very helpful question or slide that helps sort of go through the Azure path and whether people would go CSP or EA as opposed to their Azure subscription. So I will tell you, oftentimes the other slides, let me go back to this real quick. Highly look at these links. They're very helpful. So I'm not going to go through them today, but as you're trying to make sure that you've covered all your bases, this might be a good document to keep in terms of like a cheat sheet of where to go if you need help. A lot of times in the additional information, it's like they put it back there because it's additional information, but they didn't want to include it in the original presentation. I am really glad they included this because we get a lot of discussions about EA, SPLA, Open, and so some of that is handled here, and some of it's going to be in a link that I'm going to show you before we end the presentation today. So this is just a good comparison, giving you a side-by-side comparison of who might use and why, and what the sort of profiles are for CSP versus EA in terms of comparing the licensing agreement and how that goes. Open, so CSP versus Open. So really looking at why people are selling open licensing versus CSP. This is a conversation we've come back to people and said, why are you selling open? And it might be, well, I'm selling open because of, I decided I could make more money on it than CSP. If that is the case, I ask you to please get with Thomas and me, show us the calculations. I would love to provide the feedback, because if CSP is not more competitive than our other licensing options, then that's a concern, and that's something we need to address. So, I'm going to be coming back to the partners in the new year and talking about some of the calculations to help drive the discussion of, if you haven't considered CSP because you've done it in the past and it didn't make sense, are you sure that you're not missing out on some of the incentives and things that we talked about in one of the previous slides? If you've done the modeling, which we have a partner who's come back to us and told us that, and they're having some of their sort of internal discussions, because there's sort of two, factions, if you will, within the partner, I'd love to know if you can make more money and more margin another way. Because if that's the case, then I will help either figure out a way to funnel that information up so the CSP can be more competitive, or I'm going to say, go the path that you can make the most margin. It's the wise business decision. And then SPLA. Obviously, if you have a hosted environment, if you're used to doing work in co-located facilities or things like that, that's a reason to use your SPLA licensing. However, I think some of the traditional things, and we'll talk about this in the next slide I'm going to show, some of the traditional incentives and benefits of going SPLA or advisor, for better or worse, the incentives are going away and shifting towards CSP. And that is, to some, that they understand that's how business goes, and Microsoft is incenting partners to go down a path that they have chosen as sort of the direction forward. And some people feel like they're getting their incentives taken away because that was the way they like to transact. Unfortunately, Thomas and I have absolutely no control over that process. We just try to understand it, provide as much insight and clarity around it, and guide you to the best of our abilities. But hopefully this helps. And then stepping away from this presentation, so I'm actually going to stop sharing just a second. As I'm transitioning to this next point, I just wanted to open it up. Any questions that you have or anything that we could answer for you based on what you've seen so far? I can always reopen the presentation and go back to it as well. But anything that you guys have?
I'm good so far.
Okay, perfect. So let me open this up. Thomas, is there anything that you would like to add as I'm pulling up this next slide that I want us to walk through real quickly?
really, I guess the only thing that I wanted to add, and you probably mentioned it, but is on advisor. Um, just to beat a dead horse even more, Microsoft is completely moving away from advisor. If not, if it hasn't done it already, incentives are completely gone through advisors. So being the partner of record, um, that model, it's all being transitioned over to the cloud solution provider program, on how to incentivize um, partners and for the work they do, and even in relation to their competencies, like tracking consumption and how that's credited to you as a partner. So that's something that's pretty important, because I read an article a little while back, but this was an article posted over a year ago, that DPOR was dropping down to 3%. That was like a while ago. So right now, I wouldn't be surprised if there's no incentives with DPOR. Um, so yeah, that's all I had to add. If anybody has questions about that, just let me know. Um, we can talk about it now, or you can just reach out to me as a one-off.
Excellent. Thank you, Thomas. All right. Let's see if I can get this up here real quick. No, that was more than I needed. So, like I said, there are some links in here that you're going to want to go through. One is the customer licensing comparison chart, which I thought was really good. The other is partners. Let's see. This is the one. All right. I did actually save it one other place, so since the links aren't working for me, I will get it from this. So what this will show you is it's a comparison chart to look at all the different licensing types and the incentives with them. So as you're comparing what, obviously you need to do what's best for the customer first and foremost, but in understanding what your options are and how it impacts you and your bottom line, I wanted to show this. Let me share my desktop real quick. So just let me know when you see that it says cloud solution provider versus other licensing models.
Yep, I see it.
Perfect. So what I feel like this, obviously this is talking about what your options are. Advisor and Open and SPLA are typically the three that we see the most of, and there's definitely EA involved, but in the small to medium-sized business space, it's typically Advisor, Open, and SPLA are what we're seeing in terms of our partner group. One thing I would like to add, and we are trying to get some clarification on, is annual billing of CSP and how that impacts both how you pay and how your customers are billed. But I know that that's been one of the things that's come up in terms of my customers are used to paying annually. They don't like the whole thing of paying monthly. But as you can see, one of the benefits of the CSP portion is ramping up and ramping down. So one of the points of discussion that we had with partners just this week was holidays, right? So if you add on holiday staff and you have more people who need access to O365 or email, just for 2 to 3 months out of the year, you can add 2 to 3 months worth of 20 users, and then you can take them down again. So, one of the things is having a flexible model and finding some options where maybe, this came up where, if I have my staff of 100 people and I get annual billing for them, but then I go monthly billing for the 20 users that are only coming home for the 3 months over the holiday season, then I turn that on, I turn that off. So you have that flexibility. So I think knowing your customer, knowing what their cycles are like, what they're used to providing or being provided from you or from other partners is really critical. But this link is embedded in the presentation. So CSP licensing guidance, and if you need that, definitely take a look at it. And I will keep this saved now too, so we can always send it out if need be. But that's it. So I just wanted to provide this. CSP is the direction that Microsoft is going. I think other licensing options may start to disappear, like Thomas said, sort of with advisor incentives and things like that. And it's not a bad thing, because this is really, I think the purpose of the Cloud Solution Provider Program is to put you guys front and center, even if you're indirect, put you front and center with the customer so that they don't need to interact with Microsoft. They go through you, and when you guys can't necessarily help them, or you need additional support, you come to us. But at least you're the face of Microsoft working with your partner, and or with your customer, and that's the purpose. So, at that, I mean, that's all I have to share today, because I think most people know about it. I just think there's some nuances, and I want to provide information. But any other questions that you folks might have by chance?
I really like this chart, so I'm glad I got a copy of that. Yeah, I think that's helpful.
Yeah. So I think it's just these things come up quite a bit. So let us know. If you find other tools, please share them with us, because people find stuff all the time that somehow doesn't disseminate its way through Microsoft. So don't assume we have it. But glad we could share it with you.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. So with that, I think I've gotten through it all in 25 minutes. Hopefully I didn't rush too fast. But if you need anything else, you're welcome to follow up with us separately. This will be recorded and posted on our team site. And, if we don't talk to you before, have a great Christmas, and we'll be talking to you in 2018.
Sounds great. You guys too. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.